Over the last year and some change, I have reviewed a ton of mobile game controllers, but somehow I am yet to review a controller from one of the biggest brands out there. We're talking about Razer, and today we are going to rectify that problem because we are looking at the Razer Kishi Ultra. This is supposed to be one of the best mobile game controllers on the market. I've got it here. Let's crack it open and see what I think. How weird does this look? Android, iPhone, and iPad mini. I guess everything has a USB-C port now, so it actually works on iPhones. That is pretty cool. And they show this on a tablet. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe that's an iPad. I'm not a big iPhone Apple person, but that looks a bit iPad-like to me. You can see back here, like I said, USB-C. And it's got the same kind of design as a lot of the controllers that I've tested where it can kind of retract and expand. Curious to see how well it fits over some foldables, though. Theoretically, since it fits over an iPad, you would think you would be good to go. But let's open this thing up and find out. One thing I've just noticed on the cover of the box here, is this some sort of application that you're going to be running the games through? Looks kind of like maybe that's what that is. Let's set this aside and find out. Here is the Razer. We're going to set that aside before we go too far. What are these things? What is this? We have to find out what these things are. Perhaps this lovely book will tell me. We'll come back to that in just a second. Let's look at the controller itself and let's actually check out these buttons. So the face buttons, you have A, B, X, Y. These feel pretty good. They're kind of a mixture between like a clicky feeling and a membrane feeling. Like they kind of feel like a hybrid between the two. That's actually quite interesting. Shoulder buttons up here, you have not just R1 and R2, but actually R4. Very clicky. Differently clicky. And then no clicky at all. Razer on the side of it there. The sticks are, I think, pretty decently sized. That looks almost about like a normal controller. Maybe that is the same as a normal controller, so that's not a bad thing. Is this pass-through charging? That's a good idea. You have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack that you'll get when you plug this thing in. Over here, D-pad is very clicky as well. That seems okay. I don't really like the thing in between. I like just a regular D-pad. Call me old school, but that's kind of what I like. And then you have some other buttons here, probably screenshot, home, maybe settings, some sort of customized button, maybe like a different settings, something like that. We'll have to check these things out, probably useful for Xbox Game Pass streaming. And then, of course, it does expand. And man, does it expand. Wow, no question, this thing's going to work just fine on a foldable phone. That is absolutely insane how far that goes. That's crazy. Let me put a phone down here to show you. This is a Pixel 8 Pro, pretty big flagship phone. Boom, look at that. That's crazy. One thing I'm noticing, though, that I don't love, that I really liked from the GameSir controllers, is the fact that this USB-C port does not move at all. Notice how on this one, it's mobile. It can move around. Well, what is that useful for? I hear you saying to your computer screen, that's right, I can hear you. It's useful because when you plug this thing into your phone, you can have it plugged in and be at an angle so you can then drop it in and do that. It's just easier. It's safer. It's not going to potentially damage your USB-C port. Same thing for taking it out. It just kind of gives you a little bit more leeway. Now, with this one, the fact that you have such a large amount that you can stretch the thing out, perhaps it really doesn't matter either, but it's something I thought I'd point out. We'll start off here by installing it onto that very same Pixel 8 Pro, and there you go, you are installed. It doesn't look like it's going, is it meant to go in all the way there? Perhaps that's what those other things were. So it looks like this little thing in here is going to pop out, and you can actually swap them out for these different versions, which I guess depending on the size, the shape of your phone, you can kind of get the correct one in there for you. And then there's different ones that have the cutout for the USB-C port to do the same thing with. I guess those all look the same, they're just different thicknesses. Yeah, it seems like that plugged in easier now. Ooh, look at the lights that we have appearing now. That's pretty cool. Looks like we should probably need an app here, but man, there are a lot of different Razer apps to choose between. Razer controller, maybe that's the one. Let's find out. The box says it's Razer Nexus that we need, so we'll get that installed and go from there. Press the share button to take a screenshot or hold to record a video. That's the little share button down there. That's pretty interesting. This button will launch the Nexus application. Okay, so this is our Nexus application. You have popular games and games I have installed, and I can feel it's giving a haptic bump from the phone itself as I'm going through these. That's pretty cool. Virtual controller. That's an interesting one. So that, I believe, is a thing where you're going to be able to actually map your controls on the screen to buttons. We'll also have your chroma options. We can be all green. So we have spectrum cycling now. How about wave? Static. We're going to go static, and we're going to go blue. Let's just fire up Minecraft real quick and just see how this feels. Let's kill those lights. You can see, I can already tell you that this does feel pretty decent. These controls are not too bad. Joysticks are nice and big. Let's hit that share button, see how this works. We just took a screenshot. Let's try the long press. And it is triggering the screen recording. So it's just going to use the built-in screen recorder that we already have in Android. That's pretty smart. Okay, so we're back in the game now. Sun's finally coming up so you can actually see what I'm doing. That should be our start button. Home, just takes me home, duh. This should launch that application. Yeah, all of this makes quite a bit of sense actually. So of course, since you are on my YouTube channel, we're gonna talk about this thing working in conjunction with folding phones. This is my Pixel Fold, and you may look at this and think, oh, it looks like it's doing okay, at least using the cover display, but you would be wrong. The problem I'm running into is that it is actually too thick when folded over, and it's not actually plugging in far enough to turn the controller on. You can see that the lights are not active. I'll also say that I've determined that the easiest, best way to unplug this thing is to grab the phone, grab this side, and pull it apart. That seems to be the safest way to go about this. But of course, it's a folding phone. It's a tablet. So let's open the thing up and see how that works with the controller. That's how you're going to want to use it anyways. So as you can see, we have plugged in far enough for the controller to be functional, but because the USB-C port is on the right side instead of the left side, the phone is sticking way out the bottom. To me, this sort of disqualifies this thing as being good for use with foldables. I'll also mention that because it is very, very thin, you're going to need to play around with those little grip things, those little rubberized things in there to try to get it to fit well, because as it is now, it is really quite loose, which does make me just a little bit nervous. I'll say for the Pixel Fold, this is not the way to go. Let me again demonstrate kind of the way to take this thing out, grab the phone, and pull from that side, and it should be much easier. Obviously, folding phones that are not quite as wide as the Pixel Fold are going to do a little bit better on this, but as you can see, it does still extend down pretty far. I just gotta tell you, I wish the USB-C port was over there. So this is a controller from GameSir called the GameSir X2S. And not only is that USB-C port mobile, it's also on this other side, which makes it just an absolute dream to use with your foldable phones. When you plug the thing in, it starts working immediately, but this is the orientation that you're kind of in. I can barely fit all of this on the screen, but you can imagine quite comfortably, launching things, quite comfortably, you could have a game down here and then maybe split screening YouTube up top. As you can see, this just makes a lot of sense, especially on something like the Pixel Fold, which basically gives you like almost two perfect 16:9 screens. You can be running around and playing a game with something like YouTube on the top screen. Again, it's because the port is on this left side, and I really wish that these companies would sort of settle on that left side design so that these sorts of devices can be utilized like this. And I also really prefer that there's no overhang or very minimal overhang. Why? Because that means I can take my device and fold it over without having really any trouble, whereas on this device, you do have such an overhang that would not be possible. So as you can see, probably not the controller of choice for foldable users, but most people don't use foldables. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab another phone. I'm just going to grab my Pixel 8 Pro once again, and we're going to dive into some more traditional slab phone testing. So one of the things that I definitely want to test is this virtual controller option. Now we're going to test that out inside PUBG Mobile. It looks like we've got this little pop-up here, And show overlay button opacity, okay, and then this should be the option to actually drag the buttons onto screen. So what we need to do is we need to get to a spot in the game where the controls are on screen, and then we should be able to map this. Okay, so I've not gotten everything like fully configured, but I have to just immediately say, this is working out of the box better than literally any of these that I have ever tested. They always end up feeling a little bit weird and kind of hard to dial in. This is just working straight out of the box. And basically how this works is you click this button up here, and from there you can just move things around. I think I want reload to be X instead of B. Maybe B can be crouch. And we click on our little accept button, and now that's how that's working. Whenever I click on X, you can see down there the reload button is being pressed. You put your joysticks wherever you want them, and you're up and running. So let me actually change my weapons here. So we're gonna do add a button, left on the D-pad. We're gonna add another button right on the D-pad. And now I can quickly switch guns. I also want to point out that some of these things, like the stick, has its own little settings option there, camera mode, simulated finger swipes, and you have advanced options as well, so you can really dial that in. And maybe that's why this is just working so well out of the box. Like I said, aiming is never quite this smooth, but man, it feels pretty solid. Now, of course, I am using an overlay like this in what is meant to be a competitive game. I am in unranked. I'm not going to be one of those people that comes in a respawn beacon. Huh, okay. I'm not going to be playing in competitive and just messing people up with this. But it's something you got to keep in mind that if you are playing these competitive games, I suppose there's probably a decent chance that you could get banned for doing this. I think I need to move my right stick because that is actually in the way. Let's put it like dead center. Maybe there's nothing else in the way that's gonna block. Oh, nope, we are definitely not good there either. Oh, there's somebody running up on me. I mean, just like that. Just like that. You can see how well this works. I honestly feel a little bit bad about it, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. Of course, emulation is going to work really well also. This actually just fired up and worked immediately straight out of the box. This is my boy. It is a Game Boy Advance emulator, and I did no configuration at all, which is always great to see. The true test of the D-pad, of course, playing something like Mario. I did this in the wrong order. I should have had a block there. Should have Yoshi here to jump on. If it works well enough in this, then it's going to work well enough in anything. And I think it's, yeah, not too bad. Since I mentioned the integration with Game Pass streaming, of course, we do need to test that out. A lot of phones, you know, they're not 16:9 anymore, so you're going to have black bars on the top and bottom. But as you can see, I'm moving through this menu just fine. We'll load up this save. And there you go. Of course, it's going to be dependent upon like how fast your network is. I have a fiber network and a really pretty high-end router, so my latency is actually very, very low. If I handed this to somebody, they would probably not know for sure that this was streaming or not. You can absolutely see, there you go. There's the sprint button. You can totally play this. This is going to work really, really nicely with something like Xbox Game Pass streaming, or if you use what's NVIDIA's version. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. It's too early. We got our start button there. That should take me home. That looks like maybe the select button. I don't have an Xbox button, so that is one thing to keep in mind, but otherwise this should be a really solid option for game streaming. So when I was first showing off this device, I pointed out the USB-C port down there at the bottom, and I said that is probably going to be USB pass-through, and it is. So what that means is while you're plugged in, you can plug in a USB-C and be charging your device. But apparently, it's not just that. Apparently, you can actually plug this into your computer with a USB-C to A or perhaps C to C port and use it as a controller for your PC. I think the compatibility for a Mac might be coming a bit later, but for now, PC does work, and I think I need to look at that. So we are now plugged into my computer, and it appears to be functioning. And if I show this here, there is the Razer Kishi Ultra, and we drag this onto the screen. Yeah, that is absolutely functioning as a controller with my computer. So it's kind of a buy one, get two type of a situation. Granted, you're going to be kind of holding it like this. It's a little bit far apart, but you could absolutely use this as a wired controller. So here in the Nexus app, let's take a look at the settings because there's actually a lot here. So first off, include Xbox games in the launcher screen. That is actually really cool. If you're using Xbox Cloud Gaming, I guess they would appear in your list of games. And you can see live streaming is an option. Apparently from this app, you can live stream directly from your phone. And that is also very, very cool. It's amazing how far these apps have actually come. This is something important though. So let's talk about the haptics on this thing. There are 2 vibration motors in this controller. And I have to tell you, even just scrolling through the menu, they feel extremely crisp. They don't have like this sloppy feeling that a lot of cheaper vibration motors have. It's very, very noticeable. But beyond just having really, really nice haptics, they actually go a step further. There's something called audio haptics, where apparently it's going to be listening to the game audio and trying to give you vibrational feedback based on that audio. Now, this is one of those things that not all games apparently support. It says that they have a list of audio haptics compatible games that they have within the application, so keep that in mind. Overall though, what do I think about the Razer Kishi Ultra? If you are using it with a folding phone, I would say this is unfortunately a miss because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. If you are using it for a normal slab style phone or a small tablet, I can't test it on an iPad, I don't have one, but if you're using it, I'm assuming it's probably a very similar experience. On a normal slab phone like I just showed you on my Pixel 8 Pro, this is probably the best controller that I have tested. The controls feel absolutely top-notch after spending a little bit of time running around and playing some games. This feels like you are using a proper high-end controller, which is great. You have Hall effect triggers back here in the back, which I don't think I actually mentioned earlier. It feels really, really solid, and the software is where it really, kind of sets itself apart. That button mapping thing that I showed you earlier, all the other ones I've tested absolutely pale in comparison to this. The GameSir controllers are a million miles away from where this is. That worked incredibly well. It was the easiest I've set up yet, and it worked better than any of them. Massive, massive kudos to Razer for getting that incredibly right. Yes, this thing is on the pricey side. It's $149. But for $149, you are getting the most polished controller that I have tested yet. The software suite, the build quality, the buttons, the controls themselves are absolutely top notch. I don't know how much more I can really say about it, guys. I'm going to put an affiliate link into the description down below, which means if you click the link and then you make a purchase, I will earn commission from that purchase, and that is a great way to help support the channel. I do want to say thanks to Razer for sending this controller out for me to review. As always, no money has exchanged hands for the production of this review, and they are seeing it at the exact same time as you are. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.